Hey everyone, James Labrie from Dream Theater, and you're listening to or watching the podcast Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian. Enjoy this. These guys are extremely informative. I love their dialogue. I love their interpretation of the songs, who and what we are, what we were going after. They're very accurate in their interpretations and descriptions, and I just think this is a great show, and these guys are doing a stand-up stellar job. So once again, enjoy Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Talking into Infinity, a Dream Theater podcast. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the cmsnetwork.com. We are live at those four locations every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch video replays of the show on the CMS Network or at our YouTube channel. If you are watching on YouTube, please do not forget to click those like and subscribe buttons so that you are notified every single time that we go live. And if you're looking for audio replays of the show, just Google Talking into Infinity podcast. Without further ado, let me bring on tonight's subject matter expert, Mr. Brian Hendrickson. Brian, I have a feeling this is an episode you've been waiting a long time for.
You know those corporate meetings at work where it says SME? That's what you just referred to me as. I don't know if I'm a subject matter expert, but I am a ginormous Rush fan. And yeah, this is going to be awesome, man. I haven't been on the show in a month. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much to Adam Rishog from Here's What's Spinning. Great podcast those guys do up there in Canada. And awesome job on the Scenes from a Memory, man. That was very cool. I got to listen to basically 3/4 of it live. And then I had to kind of concentrate on driving the rest of the way. But man, very cool. Like, I did not realize that was literally his favorite album of all time.
I did not either. When he mentioned that, I was like, well, that's going to add some skin to this game. So that was I loved what he did with the story. I thought that was really, really cool that he was, after every song, like, okay, so here's what's going on in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because I'm too dumb to break down a lot of concept albums when there's that much stuff going on. Like, oh, well, this is a flashback to this, but then that flashback to that. And especially an album like that where it's really kind of complex and following the storyline and whatnot. But yeah, thank you so much, Adam. And I'm going to pimp his podcast again because I was very lucky to be on last week. We did a Kill Switch Engage song draft with him and his co-host Kyle. And that was awesome. And that's coming up, I think, in a couple of weeks. Right now, his current episode is Trivium ranking their album. So if you're a big Trivium fan, go check that out. But yeah, kind of a weird thing. We are going to go into moving pictures tonight. And Terry Brown actually is the producer, and he's the producer on a lot of Rush's big albums. And I double checked something because you started talking about this and I wasn't clear on it. I guess he was the vocals producer for Scenes from a Memory, from what I can gather.
Yeah, and he was also the voice of the hypnotherapist. So he did appear on there, which caused a lot of consternation between him and the band. As we discussed on the last episode, got the whole no thanks to Terry Brown
right.
on the live one. So before we get into this Rush record, though, I think we would be remiss if we didn't dive into a little bit of Dream Theater-ish news and talk about the fact that you and I both scored tickets to the Cleveland show of John Petrucci's solo tour. And we were lucky enough to get a date here, and it's the second to last day of the tour. And you got balcony seats, which you were happy about. And I screwed up getting front row seats.
Well,
and that is,
in fairness, you're like 5 feet farther back than you wanted to be, right?
Yeah, but I mean, when you could, okay. So, but here's the thing: like, I had my pick of any seat in the front row. I got in; every single seat was available. And I thought I had the code, and it wasn't working. Then I tried some other codes, wasn't working. I'm like, oh God! And then a couple of the front row seats went. I was like, oh crap! Wait a minute! I have a subscription to a pre-sale code website. So I hadn't. I thought I canceled that, so that's why I didn't think of it. But I'm like, well, at this point, I'm in a panic because tickets are starting to go. So I go to the website, log in. Don't you know it works? I get the code, go over to Ticketmaster, and it actually opens up the ticket sales. By the time it goes through, all the first and second row are sold out. I was like, God damn it. So I missed out, man. I literally had every seat available, so it would have been front row center. But I got third row center, so that was cool. And again, you are in the balcony, so how is your view going to be?
It's going to be awesome. I think in the last 3-4 shows, I refused to go to House of Blues anymore unless I get balcony. I got center, and I believe I'm fifth row. And I mean, to me, there's no better way to see the full stage of a show and be that close. And the sound of House of Blues is almost always really good. I just love that. That's going to be weird for you because we're not used to putting chairs on the floor.
I know.
House of Blues. So that's kind of like, I almost don't like that. It's what I don't like about the MGM around here.
Yeah.
Where you're sitting on those folding chairs and you're looking up at the stage. Like that kind of blows. But I don't know. The House of Blues stage isn't all that big. So I'm sure it's going to be an awesome seat there for you.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be fine. I it's not like there's some huge production that I have to pay attention to. So, it's basically, two guys standing there playing and then one guy sitting back there playing drums. So
yeah,
nothing too crazy.
I mean, is it a statement to like what the crowd they expect? Okay, it's gonna be old dudes, so they're not gonna want to stand all night. I mean, yeah. I'm not even joking. Like okay, it's not like you're gonna be you'll be bobbing your head, but you're not gonna start a mosh pit and all this to that, and
yeah,
you're not gonna be like, I don't know, you're not gonna be singing along. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just anxious to see this because I literally have never heard of chairs in front of the stage at this venue we're going to.
I haven't either. But I'm sure it's going to be awesome. I mean, honestly, our buddy Sean Faust, good to see you, man. He says, "Mosh to Happy Song."
Dude, I love that song. It's so cool.
That's great.
Robert Reams will be there. Last time I saw him up at Symphony X, so he's my new concert buddy.
Yeah, Robert Reams says he'll be there. He's got balcony seats as well. Maybe you guys are sitting next to each other. Who knows? That's actually happened to me before at concerts.
That'd be cool.
So, yeah, but yeah, it's gonna be a cool experience for sure, man. It's the only time he's ever toured solo, and to see him in Portnoy is just going to be incredible, and the ticket demand is there because I'm wondering if it's not sold out already. I haven't checked, but yesterday with just that first Live Nation pre-sale, it had to be 80-90% sold out already. So I'm wondering,
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm always bad on that because it's like there's times you look and you think they're all gone, and then you get there and you're like, well, where the hell is everybody? It's weird like that with some of these shows. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I mean, we would be going no matter what, but the Portnoy thing, I think, really sort of that ups it big time. Let's just be honest here.
Well, I mean, it may be the only time you'll ever see them playing together, unless they do another, like LTE tour or something like that. So it's, I think with ticket insurance for my pair of tickets was like, I want to say $315.
Oh, wow.
So it was close to $160 a ticket. But for me, it's like it's a once in a lifetime thing, and I kind of feel like you'd have to take away my Dream Theater fan cred if they're in my if John Petrucci's in my town on his only solo tour ever and I don't go.
You mean like Jordan Rudess? Like what a dope you'd be if you didn't go to that.
Don't open that can of worms, but
no, but let's go back to this pre-sale. Can we be done with this pre-sale garbage? Like, okay, well, you got to have the Blabbermouth code, but then if you're the Platinum House of Blues code, but then if you're a Ticketmaster, and I was able to get in because I have a Ticketmaster account, which literally means all it means is I have an email, right? I mean, there's nothing. So, because I was worried because it was like, well, it's Live Nation pre-sale. I'm like, well, I don't have a Live Nation, but then it said, well, if you have a Ticketmaster account, and I'm like, oh, you mean the email thing I have? Or like it's some big deal, but it's like you're still buying the ticket. So why is it pre-sale? I don't know. They make it so. Is that so to try to discourage scalping, or what is all that about?
I don't know. It's I wonder myself. I mean, in a way, it's kind of good because, before the pre-sale thing, all the scalpers did get, all the ticket websites just blocked off all the front rows and everything like that. And I mean, and people still do it though. I mean, as I was buying my third row tickets, the first and second row was sold out, and then all of a sudden, a pair of second row tickets popped up, and they were going for $240 a piece.
Wow.
So, almost double face value within seconds of purchasing. So, that was kind of crazy. But so back to tonight's topic, and you were mentioning Terry Brown, but we got to preface this a little bit because this is going to be a very interesting deep dive for us because for me, I am not a Rush fan, and that doesn't mean I don't like them. I'm familiar with the radio songs, but I had never listened to an entire record before. Whereas you might as well have a Rush podcast like you have a Dream Theater podcast. You know what I mean? Like you're a monstrous Rush fan. So for you, you're, again, as I said at the outset, you're going to be our subject matter expert. But this also gave you the opportunity to buy the 40th anniversary edition, which I believe you are showing off right now. Yep, there we go. So for the audio listeners, we apologize. This is a video thing, but
it's horrible podcasting.
I know. So
yeah, there's a lot of cool. So I'll just tell you quickly what's in this book. Basically, there's like 7 pages of like just kind of memories, anecdotes, and it's a weird. I would have never guessed in a million years some of the people that are in here. Now, one of them's obvious. Les Claypool does a page, but there's the guy that starts it out that really floored me. Kim Thayil from Soundgarden gets like 5 pages to talk Rush,
really,
which I would not have guessed that in a million years. I mean, very cool. Taylor Hawkins has a blurb in here. Bill Kelleher, who's from Mastodon, is actually the guitar player, I believe, not the drummer. So those are the main guys they picked. It's weird. Like there's no Portnoy in here. There's no Petrucci, obviously. I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting, and I'll reference some of the comments in here as we go to the songs, like what these guys kind of said and stuff as we go through this. But it's very cool. And there's two live albums in here also. So I'm like an incredible audiophile. I have this great 40-year thing, and I do not have a turntable to play it on. So I'm kind of starting to go down this rabbit hole. I guess I get this vinyl, and then I'll have to get something good. But there's 2 live discs with basically, let's see, 2112, Free Will, half of the album or whatever. And then there's another, I think it's a remix. There's 2. It's got that 180 gram black vinyl. So people that are like true audiophiles know what all that stuff is. I have no idea. I just know it looks really cool. But yeah, this is an awesome package they put together. And there's some unreleased stuff on here, obviously. And I don't know. I actually have the original Moving Pictures, which was actually my brother's album. Somehow I ended up with it, and I dug it out of the cabinet down here. And it's great because it's all kind of crinkled up and dinged up on the sides, and just looking at it. And something that hit me was this time period, the idea that you got to flip it over to get the rest of the songs. I don't know, something about that just like clicked with me on how cool and unique that is. Like, wow, those first 3 are really cool. What are the last 4? And then the fact that this album has 4 songs on one side and 3 on the other. There's 7 songs on here. It's like, it's just really strange. Like, but I don't know. It just brought back a flood of memories and this time period. And I'm a little bit older than you, not a ton, but man, 1981. So I don't know if you just I want to get into a little bit some of the albums that came out then. If you want to do that now, or
yeah, of course.
Okay,
it's always a good feature of the deep dives, at least for me. Yeah.
So Journey Escape, a couple hits on that one. That wasn't a bad selling album, no.
Yeah.
That
one's all right.
Probably my favorite Van Halen album, Fair Warning.
Yes. In fact, screw it. We're not doing Rush. We're doing Fair Warning. Switch topics. Where's my background?
Nice. That sounds like a tease for 2 months from now, roughly.
Yeah, a tease for our October 6th show. A little bit of Van Halen.
Okay. Ozzy, Diary of a Madman, which
yep,
I had that on vinyl. Don't Say No, Billy Squier. Extremely underrated album with just every song is a monster, in my opinion. I had that on vinyl.
Okay.
I was off on the year of this one. Mob Rules, I thought was 82. It was 81.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
Yeah, and the irony of this, probably the best album by this trio from Canada that's not Rush. Allied Forces, Triumph. Same year. Both bands released probably what's considered their seminal album, I guess.
Okay.
Abacab Genesis, that's kind of when the beginning of the Peter Gabriel's gone and we're going more rock mainstreamish, I guess you want to call it. Foreigner 4. There was no band or album bigger for almost a 2-year period until probably Michael Jackson came along to that Foreigner 4 album. It was just, you could not get away from it. It was just absolutely everywhere with Jukebox Hero and Urgent and all those songs on there. Def Leppard, High and Dry, which I won't pretend to have listened. I'm not gonna be one of those people. Oh, I got into them then. Like, no, I didn't know anything about Def Leppard until Pyromania came,
Right.
And Killers, Iron Maiden, and the last one I'll say is AC/DC for those about to rock. So that's a pretty heavy lineup there.
That's a lot of really good records, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of probably the greatest record they ever did. Triumph. I don't know. What do you think about Diary? Would you put that ahead of anything or no?
On the list we're talking about?
Well, in terms of Ozzy's.
It's a battle between that and Ultimate Sin for me.
Okay, so you'll at least say it's got a chance, right?
Yeah, it's definitely top 2 easily for Ozzy records for me. I love Diary, but I love Ultimate Sin. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, that was the hair Ozzy record or whatever," but I mean, Jakey Lee on that record was just insane. So I love it.
The one thing I did not realize about this until I kind of went back and looked is how Rush just put out so many albums so quickly.
Yeah.
From 74 to 78, they had 6 albums, 2 in 1 year.
But that's how bands were doing it back though then. I mean, it's like, look at Van Halen. They had, between 78 and 84, they had 6 records, but they had, with after Fair Warning, they really split it out between, Diver Down in 1984. So they were really kind of, smashing them in there. So, that's just how bands did it back then. If you were successful, the labels wanted you to put something out like right away and keep staying on the road. So,
yeah, they definitely did that. So Terry Brown was on sort of Fly By Night all the way up to Signals. That's his. That's a lot of serious albums there. But they did 3 in a row: 80, 81, and 82 between Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures, and then Signals. It's like,
yeah,
those are 3 pretty darn seriously considered. Like, that's kind of like consider their one sort of period, their trifecta period right there of that. But 3 in 3 years, like, wow.
Yeah.
So what is your first inclination with hearing Rush?
In terms of listening to this record or just overall?
Well, just overall.
Like overall, it was just kind of like they were there. I never really had a reaction to it. It was like one of those things like, okay, like obviously I knew Tom Sawyer, Working Man, Limelight, all that stuff. And, it was cool. It was just kind of there. It's nothing I ever sought out. Our buddy Chris Aiken chimes in on your point about the trifecta. He says, and then came Grace Under Pressure. Yikes.
Hey, I like that album. So zip it, Aiken.
Nice.
But sweet haircuts too.
Yeah, Rush was just kind of there. It wasn't anything that I sought out. It wasn't anything I liked or disliked. It was like, okay, that's cool. I didn't turn it off, but I didn't, run out to the store to, get it. So, this is really my first, it's not just a deep dive into this record for me. It's kind of like a deep dive into the band in a way, because this is the most I've ever listened to them. And I got to say, man, I really, really like this record. A lot of times when you do stuff like this, it's like learning songs for a cover band. Like you do it because you have to. It's not because it's enjoyable. And sometimes you get stuck listening to stuff just because you have to. We've done discography discussion. We did that Symphony X thing, and it was good, but I found myself in the middle going, God damn, I got to listen to another Symphony X record. And with this one, I just kept listening to Moving Pictures because I enjoyed it. So I really got into it, man. It was really, really cool, and it's kind of making me want to go down the Rush rabbit hole a little bit. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that. But
yeah, 41 minutes, 7 songs. This is like the perfect kind of for that what they called album oriented rock time period.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Camera Eye their longest song ever? Did I read that correctly?
probably, unless you count like 2112 in its entirety or something, maybe.
I thought I read that it's like their only song that's like 10 minutes or longer.
Yeah.
All right.
It's rare.
Aiken, of course, has to bust my balls. Says John Drake discovers Rush in 2022, always having the pulse of rock music.
That Tom Sawyer, that's a rockin' little ditty there.
Boy, these three Canadians, I think they got a future. Sean Faust, he says, a farewell to kings or hemispheres next. Okay.
Well, let's not overdo you there. I'll probably point you towards signals just to keep you on track for a bit.
Okay.
Before it gets too out there.
So what makes Rush is Rush your favorite band? Like, we've talked on the show how Van Halen's my favorite band, and then there's Dream Theater is a close number 2. Is Rush your number 1?
You know what? I will say? I think they're my most appreciated band.
Okay.
Because I not only appreciate them for their music, but I've always just these guys were brothers. They did not care about fame. They did not care about money. They did not care about album sales. They cared about the music and the friendships. And when you listen to interviews, that's what they'll tell you, that's just the way they saw it, and that's the way they did it. And that's why it lasted as long as it did.
I would assume you kind of have to have it that way because it's only a trio. If you're in like a 5-piece band, you can get away from, you can hang out with one of the other band members and still have 3 guys going, just piss off, whatever. By the way, 1974 is correcting me. Thank you. He says, no, it was their last 10-plus minute song. Okay, there we go. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Xanadu was like 11 minutes, but I couldn't think of it. Yeah, going back to your point, it's also when the roles are clearly defined. Like, I don't know who wrote the lyrics before Neil Peart came in, but whenever he first started writing lyrics, they're like, yeah, okay, it's over. You're just doing it from now on. You know what I mean? So there was never any arguments about, well, I'm going to write the lyrics, or I'm going to get the song credits, or, it just, I don't know. And then they just tried to make the best, music that they could, I think.
Yeah. Everything I've ever read about them, which granted isn't a lot, but and I've seen it because I did that what's Beyond the Lighted Stage, I think it's called, that documentary about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, they're basically like brothers and stuff like that. And you make a great point. It's hard to keep that together because there's less people, so your interpersonal relationships are more focused than they would be with more band members to kind of spread your attention around to. So it's just cool, man. So I think I definitely agree with you that one of the attractive things about them as a band is that they are friends and stuff like that. I mean, that it goes a long way when you know that the guys that you're listening to are actually cool and, they get along and there's not dicks, it's kind of like the Dave Mustaine thing. Like, I like Megadeth, but there's always that thing in the back of my head when I listen to him, like, man, Dave Mustaine is a cock. Like, it just, you know what I mean? Like, it affects you that way. Chris Aiken says, as great as Rush was on record, you don't get it until you see it. I love them live, but really only up until the early 80s on albums, excuse me. Yeah, I've been told that too, that Rush live was just ridiculous. And I did look some stuff up on YouTube to catch that too, and it was wow.
Yeah, I'll full disclosure too. I was not a fan of probably the last 2 albums, at least. When I saw the songs on there done live, I liked them a little more. But when you have that vast of a catalog, I mean, I don't care who you are. It's impossible to come up with, especially how do you just keep topping yourself? You're not going to get a better drum part than stuff that goes on in Tom Sawyer, right? I mean, yeah, there's incredible stuff on Signals too that's maybe a little more technical, but at some point it just you can't top yourself. But yeah, the newer stuff I wasn't a huge fan of, but I appreciate the fact that they didn't care. Like, we like creating albums, we're going to do them, we're going to tour on them, and we'll still play, maybe 3 songs on them if we're lucky, because we've got to play 14 hits a night. How many songs from new album can we possibly play?
Yeah. Well, let's dig into this. I have some notes here. I'd be interested to get your thoughts because again, this is a little different. It's not a record that we're both huge fans of and we've been listening to for years. And so, for me, I'm kind of coming at this with fresh ears. I'm like a rookie, whereas you are, the seasoned Rush veteran. So my first note is that I can see why this is their most popular record. It's a very easy listen. It flows nicely. It's got a really cool feel to it. It's very atmospheric. I shouldn't say especially for a record recorded during that time. It's very lush, and there's a lot going on, which is the one thing that's always fascinated me about Rush is that for three guys they make so much noise. It's really cool. Geddy Lee's bass tone is just godlike. I mean, to the point where I have a point about that when we get into Tom Sawyer here in a minute, but and the other thing that I noticed that's really cool is like they're known as this prog band. They're like influenced all these bands that came after them, but they wrote all these songs that appeal to the prog crowd, but also to a mainstream radio crowd. I don't think you can say any other band except for potentially Pink Floyd that was there hasn't been another band that's like that appeals to both of those crowds. You know what I mean? So I thought that was really cool. And, and the other thing that I noticed, and I've always heard this, about Neil Peart's lyrics is how intelligently written they are and everything. And man, that really stood out. And I am not lyric guy by any stretch of the imagination. I only notice them if they suck. If a lyric is obviously crap, then I'm like, okay, that stood out. But if it's not something that stands out, I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm listening to the guitar. I'm listening to the drums, the bass, whatever. And on this stuff, man, I was actually digging into like, what's the meaning of this song? Like, what does this mean? What does that mean? I actually had a note for a minute on Camera Eye saying, is this actually about just taking frigging pictures? God damn it. So
I hope I have answers for those. I probably don't.
Yeah, well, no, it's not. But Austin Donnelly, good to see you, man. He says this album is the perfect gateway into prog rock, in my opinion. And Aiken says that Asia was another band that appealed to both crowds. Yeah, but I mean, how many hits did Asia have compared to Rush, though? I mean, I would have to say Rush had more than Asia, no?
Asia probably had about 4 total, maybe 3 to 4.
Okay.
But yeah, Asia's a good example, I think, of like maybe a poor man's Rush. I don't know about the gateway into that term. Just always scares me. Prog rock. Does it scare you sometimes?
No, but I think it's weird to me now because I think of Dream Theater as progressive. So when I hear something like Rush considered progressive, I'm waiting for all these insane time changes and all that. And I have to remember that Dream Theater just took what came before them and basically juiced it up on steroids. So,
Yeah. No, so one of the albums I didn't mention that's on this 1981 list is Police, Ghost in the Machine. And I was like doing some research and stuff online, reading some stuff. And I was thinking back to some of the songs on there and I'm like, man, these are actually very similar sounding in some of the guitar tones. And sometimes when they get into almost a reggae feel and some stuff, and they don't do it often, but it does go there. Like the Police would do a 4.5 minute song on that. Whereas Rush was like, okay, well, take a little bit of a breakdown here, like on Spirit Radio and whatnot or whatever, and do that. Or even on Vital Signs, there's kind of some elements of that. But
sure.
But yeah, atmospheric is definitely the word. And I was reading too, like Rush, there was no skimping with the record company or with them. Like we're using the top line, recording equipment, the top producer. We got our synthesizers out here, and just for the opening riff of that Tom Sawyer, like. You think like, how simple is that? It's just, it's so simple. Like it's the one note on the Oberheim, I guess it's the Overtime or the Moog. And then the drum beat comes in and the guitar comes on right away. It's just like, wait, this is like considered the greatest rock song of all time. If you just hear the first like 3 seconds of it, but then his voice kicks in and it's just like the hair on the back of your neck stands up. Like, I don't know, the melody is just, it's like this super high, vocal in there with that killer guitar, and then that drum beat is just like it's hitting you. The bass drum is just thumping you right in the stomach, and you're like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's we'll get into it. I mean, my first note regarding Tom Sawyer, it's the Rush song. You love him or hate him, everybody when you hear, Tom Sawyer, you know it and you know what band it is. So, it's and I mentioned, I kind of teased this earlier, but Geddy's bass tone in the guitar solo on this song is just that's when it really stands out. You first get that first taste of it, to the point where I was like, oh, there's a guitar solo going on. Every single other time I listened to the song, radio, whatever, I was listening to the bass. I'm like, oh crap, there's guitar going on. I realized that doing the deep dive, because I was just so into that sound, and it's crazy.
Well, it's more of a lead instrument than a support. It sort of does both at the same time, which you're a bass player. That is not easy to do. to play. Okay, well, but you know what I'm saying though, like to make it sound like you're supporting, but you're also leading and driving it. That's an art. And like,
yes,
this album, this trifecta, as we call it, the bass all kind of sounds like, and sort of does that, to where almost like it's a second guitar. If you didn't know any difference, like if you didn't know the difference in looking or hearing, like, well, that's another guitar doing that, because look at how they're driving it and leading it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you make a perfect point, and I was going to bring that up later, that it's like he rides that very fine line between rhythm instrument and lead instrument, and he crosses over to either side multiple times within a song, and there's not a lot of guys that can do that nearly as well as he does. And I mean, to do that and lead sing at the same time is just, it's crazy. It's man. He's here. Okay, so I'm getting shit. Okay,
it's coming. You gotta pull it up.
All right. So, all right. Look. Okay. You know this stuff. So my point was that yes, they said Yes was a band that crossed over to both audiences. I said I disagree. They had one big hit. What is that? Owner of a Broken Heart, Lonely Heart, whatever the hell it is. What was another big song that everybody can name? Just because you know it doesn't mean, Aiken, you fat bastard. He says, John doesn't know anything about the 70s unless it starts with Van and ends with Halen. I know Led Zeppelin too, you prick. And not just the record. Dude, okay, like, when you think about hit songs, it's not like something everybody names.
John doesn't know anything about 60s unless it starts with Van and ends with Morrison.
I don't even know a Van Morrison song.
Come on, Brown Eyed Girl. Jeez.
Oh, okay, well, I do know that one. But yeah, it's not, I mean, dude, see, look, okay, Sean Faust, Rhythm of Love, that's a Scorpion song, Sean. Roundabout, I don't know Roundabout.
Well, off of 90215,
I don't know Rhythm of Love.
You have It Can Happen. That was probably the second biggest hit off of there. Love Will Find a Way was the album after that. That was fairly big.
Just stop. I'm right on this one. I'm willing to die on this hill.
I will say you're more right than they are. I think you're both actually kind of wrong, but I think they're more wrong than you are.
Will we get a YouTube ding if I throw up a double bird?
Don't chance it anymore, man.
Yeah, right. No, enough Facebook jail for me, man. Tom
Sawyer. So to go back to that, did you ever go roller skating back, like, grade school? Or so your music that they played would have been different than mine, but it was like, all right, your discos, or like, did you hear like the Star Wars disco theme?
Yeah,
that's blasting along roller skating, and then all of a sudden, like, Tom Sawyer would come and I'll be like, oh man, this is awesome, and I get down to my stance and do my like one leg out, and my one trick I can do, which I'm not even good at. But it was like, I felt like awesome out there with the lights down low and flashing, and Tom Sawyer comes on, and you're like going around the roller rink to break up your Pat Benetars, and your disco.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's the thing that always gets me about this song, and it was like I always love the groove to it. So to your point, if you roller skate to it or do something like that, it's a perfect song to do that to. But as I was digging into this, like I was really listening to the drums, like, and he's doing a lot of stuff that you don't really notice unless you're actually listening for it. It's funny because, like, as musically gifted as they are, and they're known as being like such virtuosic guys, virtuosic, whatever the word is, like, there's a lot of subtlety to what they're doing, and it seems simple off the top. When you really dig into it, it's really not. And I think that's just fascinating. It's like there's so much to listen to. Like it was man, it was a lot of fun to listen to this, to find those little nuggets like that. And Tom Sawyer, Pert's Groove on there. There's a lot of like little symbol, stuff that he's doing there. And we do have a question for you from the person on the losing end of our argument regarding Yes. Chris Aiken wants to know, question for Brian. Why do you think Tom Sawyer was so enormous, but New World Man didn't quite get to that level?
That's actually a great example of that reggae thing I was talking about, because in the verses of that, he's a it's like up picking and stuff, like like in the verses of that song. And then it's not, when the chorus comes in, it's rocking with the guitar and keyboard and stuff, but the verses really has that reggae feel to it. So I don't know if it wasn't rock enough, or if the album came so quick and everyone's still riding the highs of Moving Pictures and Tom Sawyer that they're just not even quite ready yet, because they're like, but Subdivisions was huge off of there. So yeah, I don't know. I love New World Man as a song. Of course, I'm a huge fan of Signals anyway, but I think maybe that kind of funky, reggae-ish verse that they do in that song, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard that song like once, but I know what you're talking about with the verse, and maybe that's it. Reggae isn't as direct, I guess, as a straight rock beat, so maybe that didn't grab
I use the term
people,
reggae loosely. It doesn't sound like Bob Marley, it's just
no, yeah, but I know what you mean, like with the uppicking
right.
and the yep. So, all right, so moving on to track 2, which full disclosure, that is my favorite song on the record. I absolutely cannot get this damn song out of my head. Red Barchetta. This is another one. Like I was wondering what the hell it was about when I looked up the lyrics, and it's cool because so many of Neil Peart's stuff, it's actually a story, and I didn't know that going into this, so that's pretty cool. But a Red Barchetta is actually a Ferrari. It's actually a car. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So yeah, this song is, man, like the story's cool. Before the motor law. So it just, again, back to the lyrics, super intelligent lyrics, tells a great story, and the song moves. It just kind of grooves. It's got a really good pace to it, and you kind of like bop along to it, but it's also super melodic in all of its parts as well. And man, I absolutely love this song. And I know that this is I know that this is a favorite of Rush fans, and I can totally see why, because this song is just great all the way through. It's
the first time you ever heard this?
I would say that, because I mean I've listened to little bits and pieces here and there, but never like a full song. And I mean, full disclosure, I probably listened to the Dream Theater cover of it that's on one of like the Christmas CDs or something like that, and not the actual Rush version. So, but
no, that's cool. I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, dude, this really is very new to me. So, yeah, this is definitely the song that I came back to the most on the record. So I love this song. This is I can see why fans love this one.
How an album is great when the first song is over and you're like, oh man, I want to hear Tom Sawyer again, and then they start the intro, the down, and you're like, yes,
yeah,
like you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh my god, I forgot this was coming up right away. Like,
yep,
yeah, well, what a great riff, man.
Yeah, it was funny because I was listening to some of the live stuff, and I pulled up the Cleveland show from 2011 that they put out, and they did this record in its entirety, and every time a new song comes on, the crowd just goes bonkers. It's like they know what's coming, but they're still like shitting their pants over it. It's so that's perfectly to your point. But
yeah, you get the feel of like when it speeds up there, of going fast in the car, you can totally feel like that wind in your hair and stuff in some of the lyrics they're talking about. But like you honestly, you get that experience from what they're doing, what they're writing about, and they're able to convey that. And that's just not easy to do. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, it shows the intellect and the intelligence of the music, to be able to do that, to actually make you feel something and feel that story. It's, just another thing. Pert was a genius, man. Like that was one of the most fun things about doing this to me, was that getting to dig into his stuff. Because everybody reveres the guy, and just with one record, I can see why. And it was really cool because it like I said, went down the rabbit hole, and as I would look up lyrics, it would bring up the meaning of other songs and other things that he did, with the band, and it was so cool. So, yeah. So, all right. So moving on to track 3, the quintessential instrumental song, YYZ. I think is there anybody that considers themselves, a prog fan that doesn't hear that bing 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 bing, like, oh, here we go. Like, I think that's like pretty much gospel at this point for progressive rock fans.
So I found out the interesting backstory of this song, and I don't know if you've ever heard this before. I had heard something like this, but I didn't know the details. So it's in the liner notes here. So YYZ is the International Air Transport Association code for the Toronto airport.
Okay.
And what they are doing during, I guess, the beginning or middle of the song, they're playing YYZ actually in rhythm to Morse code. Now, I don't know anything about Morse code other than like, we ever as a kid, like I remember one Christmas we got walkie-talkies. Something like my brother would go upstairs and I'd go downstairs. And then you have like the package that tells you how to do Morse code. So you try to like, like try to say something and be like, wait, what did you just do? Like, I have no idea. But yeah, like kind of a cool little side thing, just goofy little deal that they did. So that's actually what that refers to. And there's an interesting thing on Les Claypool's nugget in there. So Geddy Lee did this massive book of, I don't know how many bases are in there, 300 or something, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's all these photos, and then there's just, I don't think every single one of them has a story. I don't know, because that would be a lot. But Les Claypool had a collection, and he had some specific ones that Geddy Lee wanted to check out for his book and interview him and stuff. So he came over there, and he said, well, he's like, oh, here's the only deal is like, you have to show me if I'm how to play YYZ, if I'm playing it right. And he's like, there's a surreal moment, the album I learned, note for note, playing in my bedroom, my hero standing here and playing it. And it's like, yeah, 43 years, I've been playing it wrong.
Nice.
Sure enough, I had some parts wrong. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny. Just a cool little side note on that. But yeah, the quintessential tune. I love the synths in this, the way they're placed. I mean, just this whole album, it's like, we got a synthesizer. How can we work it in here? And just enough to, tempt your palate to where you want a little bit more, but if you put more in, it'd be too much,
Yeah. Well, and I have that in my notes. It's like perfectly written because it's not too long, and it stays interesting to the ear the whole time. They get into a cool part, and you get just enough of that to where, and then when it changes, you're like, okay, cool. You're not thinking, oh, I could have gone for more of that, or oh, that went too long. It's perfectly timed, and again, back to Geddy Lee. I mean, his bass work on this song is just, man, oh man. And that mellow part in the middle, that's the one part I wish they could have expanded on, because that's just a beautiful melody. I love when it just like kind of like eases into that and just kind of, man, it's so melodic and it's just so beautiful. It's cool to have something like that in the middle of all that craziness. So I thought it was like perfectly placed. So I really dug that.
Yeah, that song was nominated for a Grammy for Best Instrumental, I guess, which I didn't even know was a thing in 81, but that's in there. I don't know if it won, but it was. So I'm I would assume that it didn't say anything about Tom Sawyer. So, and given the state of like how Grammys were, I'm sure that they got zero. Well, I said were, still are, right?
Did Jethro Tull win the Grammy that year?
Yeah. Queen won for their Metallica cover, I guess. Like using their time machine or something.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, I mean, YYZ, like, there's parts of that and some Dream Theater stuff, like even like Looking Glass has a little bit of a feel of that in it, for sure.
Yep.
And we've talked about, plenty of other Dream Theater songs that have some Rush influence, but Yeah, I mean that's just the ultimate. Like you said, you only get what 4.5 minutes or whatever it is out of it, and that's all you
Yep.
need.
Yeah, it's perfect. All right, so moving on to track 4 on the record, we have obviously one of the radio hits and an absolute classic from Rush's catalog, Limelight. I love this tune. If it weren't for Red Barchetta, this was my favorite Rush song, but it's been overtaken by Red Barchetta. But Limelight is just, I think if I was ever able to play a Rush song live, this would be the one that I would choose. I would want to do this one because that chorus is like so cool, and it's got melody all the way through, like all of its parts. Like there's something to hear, like melodically, and the one thing that I think is really really cool about this song, Brian, is it's got like, this may not be the right terminology because I'm an idiot, but I kind of think of it as like a deconstructed chorus where they break it down to like the broken chords and they just simple melody and just really mellow kind of, and the rest of the song is the part that rocks. And I just think that's such a cool songwriting technique, and they use it to such great effect on this song, and it's just, I mean, it makes that melody stand out that much more. So I love that about this song, and it's this song is like peanut butter on the roof of your mouth. I can never get enough of it. Anytime it's on the radio or if it comes up at random, when I'm listening to stuff, I never skip it. It's great. So, what are your thoughts on Limelight?
Yeah, I don't know how much you know about it, but this was a very kind of a personal song to Neil, sort of speaking to his, especially the line, I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend. And it's this idea that like he just really is not comfortable with that persona, and like doesn't like being adored, and doesn't like fans falling all over him, and it's not that he doesn't like it, just makes him feel uncomfortable. And when you really think about it, you can kind of relate to it on a universal level. Like man, I didn't get into it for this at all. I'm into this for the music and stuff. And it's like, I kind of want to just be left alone, but I realize the fans are a part of it. But it's like, I can't just turn on the switch and be like, it's not that he wasn't appreciative at all, but he just really was a very kind of quiet, private guy that just didn't really want or need all of that.
Yeah. It's, again, a story by Neil Peart, as they all are. And this one's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Especially if you know Neil Peart and his, infamous reclusivity, I guess would be a term to use. He like you said, he's not comfortable being the center of attention. He just kind of wants to be left alone. And he's a little curmudgeonly in that kind of, in that area. He just wants nothing to do with the fame and fortune, or wanted, I should say. But musically, I mean, again, this is that perfect example of what we talked about at the outset, saying that this is a band that, appeals to both the prog crowd and to the radio rock crowd. And this song it's got that instantly recognizable riff, that monster chorus, and yet it's got some really cool musicianship to it as well. So I think it rides that rail between both worlds really nicely. Look at Aiken. He said, fun Grammy fact. Motorhead's only Grammy came for a Metallica cover of Whiplash.
How about Lost?
Wow. That's okay. I covered for you.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean that's one of the most iconic guitar riffs of all time opens that, like I just, as soon as you hear that, you're like, it's just gonna be one of the greatest rock songs ever recorded, just coming your way. And
Yep.
I just wondered, like, the first time anyone ever heard this or bought the album, like, did you realize that, like, did they realize that when they recorded this? I mean, obviously not. Nobody would know something is going to become this iconic, no matter what it is. I don't think. Do you?
No, I mean, I think no one writes for that purpose, and the ones that do, I mean, with the exception of like the greatest songwriters ever, like the Beatles and people like that, if you're trying to write for the purpose of writing a hit, it doesn't happen. it's not really organic. I mean, you can make it happen, and there's people like Desmond Child who can just like whip up, top 10 singles, 6 times a day. But, for the average musician and writer, even some of the best of them, it's difficult. And, with Rush, they're a prog band, so I find it hard to believe that they're sitting there going, "Oh, we better write a hit on this one," because that's not their thing. But their style was to, write these catchy parts and then put the prog musicianship into it. And honestly, I would say that that's like the biggest influence that they had on Dream Theater, because that's really the Dream Theater formula as well. Like, you'll have this catchy riff and then a big chorus, but then you have all that crazy musical stuff in and out, between the parts like that. But there's always that melodic anchor. There's always that really cool riff that you can latch onto. It's not just a bunch of noodling for the sake of noodling. Like, there's an actual method to the madness. And, I think they definitely get that from Rush.
Yeah, and what's cool too, and the average fan I don't know knows this, like Geddy Lee is one of those rare singers that sort of went through 3 vocal phases, like they used to call him the chipmunk on acid,
Right.
going back to the 2112 and Working Man stuff. And then here he's kind of getting away from that wail. He's still singing a higher register, but as he gets older and goes on, that register really kind of drops some, but he's able to still really just keep a super tight melody and understand his limitations. And it was weird seeing the last couple of years, like, because you could tell he wasn't struggling to hit the notes, I don't think, but it was like just to kind of keep it in that style, like to kind of sort of maintain that feel of it, like you would see him like his face would contort and this and that. And he sounded just a little bit, I don't want to say off, but there was a little bit of an affectation almost to try to still pull this off, but it still sounded solid to me. I mean, for a guy as old as he was and to sing a lot of these songs. But that's just something you don't really see where singers go through phases like that.
Well, and I mean, it's understandable. I mean, the guy, it was 40 plus years they were doing it, so I guess that's to be expected. Aiken has another question for you. Brian, they were so in the pocket with this era. Why do you think that albums like Snakes and Arrows, Presto, Hold Your Fire, Test for Echo, etc., basically after the electronica experiments, could never find it again?
Yeah, I don't know. So I will say Presto I thought was very solid. Hold Your Fire still had a lot of keyboards on it. Test for Echo is probably the one album I just never go back to at all. I don't know. I don't know if they lost their sense of maybe not melody, but maybe they just sort of wanted to be a little more experimental and little more rock driven and not necessarily get that hook in there on some of the songs. That's what I would say. At least that's kind of what I heard on the Snakes and Arrows and the Working Them Angels or whatever the hell the last one was. I get the last 2 albums titles mixed up, but
Snakes and Angels, Arrows and
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, and this is just me, from personal experience writing songs, obviously not on their level by any means, but I think once you start trying to spread out into other stuff, you kind of dilute the waters of what you do, and it gets harder to go back to all these bands when they'll put out a new record and say, "Wow, we're back to our roots," but is it ever really? Because it's like, because that new style that you tried kind of gets into your bloodstream. It gets into your style. And so you can never quite go back to the purity of what you had before you did that. So I'm wondering if that's, and not being familiar with those records. I mean, that's just me positing, but that's, from someone who's written music.
I buy that to a degree. I mean, it got to a point where they were, I believe, Geddy was writing songs around synth parts that he probably wanted in there. And I don't know that was something that they wanted to, once they did 3-4 albums like that, you know, I know that Alex particularly was like, you know, we got to get away from this, and that's why they kind of ended up with Presto, sort of going back to that well. But I don't know that Neil ran out of ideas, because lyrically, you know, I still like most of it, all the lyrics he said. I just didn't think the melodies on a lot of the songs were strong. But you know, like I said, he was losing his range wasn't as big either. And I don't know, like stuff like Vapor Trails, they kind of got almost a U2-ish a little bit there, and the guitar and even some of the vocals, and really kind of atmospheric, I would say, for lack of a better word. Like Vapor Trails was still okay, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just I think Neil, especially musically, definitely by the end he was exhausted. I mean, that's well documented. Like he was just beyond done, and he's had some horrible tragedies that happened in his life, and then obviously he got sick. But I mean, he was just to the point where he was like, look, my feet are covered in blisters, my arms are, you know, I'm 64 years old or whatever, I'm up here, I'm bashing for 3 hours. You know, I just think the mental drain of all that, maybe that seeps over into trying to even get the creative energy, maybe to where, you know, because even if it drops off, let's say, I don't know, 15-20%, when you're as good as Rush is, that's still better than most. But it's like, you know what I mean? But people are expecting Rush, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just a theory.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. And, you know, especially with Neil, I mean, his drumming technique was very physical, even more physical than you would normally see a drummer put forth. You know, I've watched a couple things online, and there's some, I forget which live DVD it's from, but there's some stuff on YouTube I looked at, and it's, you know, the camera is over top of the drums, and those drums are moving when he's playing. Like, I don't know if he set that up purposely for them to move and get that kind of groove to it, but you don't see that with other kits. I mean, that guy's hitting hard, and that takes a toll. You know, I mean, you know, 21/12/1974. He brings up a good point. He said Neil always compared the amount of effort he put into every live show as to running a marathon. Hard. It's harder to do in your 50s and 60s. Yeah, I mean, drumming is an incredibly physical instrument, and you know, my drummer, you know, he gets beat up from just doing, you know, dumb pop cover tunes, but he's a hard hitter, and he gets into the show. He you know, he's got a lot of stage presence to him for a drummer, and it does beat you up.
Well, so what about the idea in the documentary where the greatest, I guess we can, maybe we can't even argue, who's considered the greatest technical rock drummer of all time? Maybe we could agree on that. Like, goes to take drum lessons. Like, do you remember that in the documentary?
Yeah.
I think it was, I don't know if it was strictly physical, for his physical problem, or he felt like he was losing his ability. And it's like, and the guy really, if you watch the movie, like all the guy did was say, well, just kind of just do this a little bit different way you're holding your stick here or whatever. Now, I don't know how much they didn't show of his drum lessons, but I guarantee this dude didn't just sit there and show Neil Peart how to play drums. I mean, that's not what happened. But just like a little subtle thing, but you have to be a genius mind to go, oh, well, I can translate that little subtle thing into 45 years of muscle memory and flip that and change the way I play and still sound like I do. Like, I thought that was like a very vulnerable kind of look behind the scenes of like a truly great art, you know, like you know, I don't know, like a Babe Ruth at 55 getting a swing lesson, or, you know what I mean? Like, right. I don't know, something along those lines. I don't know. I just thought it was a really cool, like, look behind the curtain of like, man, these guys are, as great as they are, they're human. They're not machines, you know?
Well, it shows humility, and we'll get to the second half of the record here in a second, but it shows a humility and an honesty that, you know, not a lot of musicians have. You know, you see guys like Stephen Pearcy and Don Dokken and David Lee Roth running around croaking like frogs. They couldn't give a shit what they sound like, and they're just taking people's money. Whereas you got somebody like Neil Peart, who's like recognized as the greatest drummer on the planet, and he's like, oh, I need lessons. I'm losing it a little bit. Like that. You don't find that. You just don't see that. So, you know, to your earlier point about, you know, their brothers and they're likable people, like that just makes them more likable. because you could tell he's not just up there going like, worship me, I'm Neil Peart. He's like, no, I'm just a dude who plays drums. Like, and that's cool. So
I like
but
that
yeah, so
comment from Aiken. How do
yeah.
you take Neil's money as a teacher?
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know if the guy actually maybe he just got a couple signed autographs or something. Who knows? But
That drum teacher probably had no idea who Neil Peart was. He's like, man, this old guy just came to me for lessons and he was a prick. I don't know who this guy thinks he is, but this guy's got a lot to learn.
yeah, he's never going to go anywhere.
That rookie. I don't know why I even taught him. But all right, so moving on to side 2 of the Moving Pictures record, we have The Camera Eye. And one thing that I love about this song is that the keys remind me of a cheesy but great 80s sci-fi movie. And there's a couple other keyboard sounds on this record that do the same thing for me, but I love it. It just, it comes right in with it. And I love the tonality of the keys on this one. It's really, really cool. I love the change up in the middle of the song. I thought that was really, really interesting. But it also kind of made me laugh because it's one of the few things they do that just literally comes out of absolutely nowhere, at least to me. And it almost sounded like going like, we're tired of this intro part. Let's do something else. I should say I was referring to the change in the beginning, but like,
right.
It just goes into the like, what the hell is that? Like,
well, it's funny because you don't have any perspective on this at all, right? Because you didn't hear it in 1981 where it's like, oh my God, what is that sound? It sounds so cool. Now you hear it and you're like, hey, did these guys just go watch Stranger Things or something?
Yeah.
Did the Stranger Things dude come in here and play keyboards on this?
Yeah.
Which I think is always the hilarious part of this stuff, because like, it's like, not to be get off my lawn guy, but it's like you have to look at it in the perspective. Okay, from the time, like, I just remember hearing those sounds and like, man, how did they get all those like weird little, those the different filters they're changing around the oscillators on the synth, and they all got to be moving them up and down and all this weird stuff going on at once. And then, like you said, though, then you come up, meow, 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 it's like, I always thought that was cool when that part came in. But
yeah,
this is just a super slow build. I mean, it's like, it's 10 minutes long, but I don't know. It's never felt that long for me because I'm always just I'm just like waiting for the next part. I'm like, I can't wait for it to come. And
yeah, that's one of my notes. It's an almost 11-minute song, but it flows, and it's we've talked about Dream Theater songs that are really long but don't feel that long, and this is definitely in that vein because you realize it's going on, but you're into it. It's it's just a really cool vibe to it, and there's some interesting they throw some curveballs at you in this song, and it just flows really well, and it does not drag, even though again it's almost 11 minutes long. Now for you, is this like, if you were to see them live, is this like one of the songs be like, oh, if I had a Rush set list, I want to see this one? Because I read a lot of comments from fans saying that this is kind of the song that they would really want to hear if they saw them, and they didn't play it very much.
No, you never got this and Countdown from Signals, I love, which has all the stuff from like the space shuttle in the background. But before the bad stuff happened with the space shuttle, let's just clarify that. But they never played this. That's why I was kind of bummed. I missed obviously just I missed it in general. I was bummed, but the show where they played the whole album, because they just never played this song. So what is your opinion on the topic, the subject of this? What do you think this is about?
Well, from what I read, it's kind of like the difference between like New Yorkers and Londoners, I guess.
Okay.
So it's, I mean, okay, it's a topic,
right?
It's and it kind of seems like one of those things, like Neil Peart was kind of, it's just like a, he was just watching things around him as he was on tour and being like, man, like these two cities are kind of similar but yet so different, I guess would be, my interpretation of it. I don't know if that's correct. So, I mean, people listening, that love this record and know this song, don't crucify me, but it's just me guessing. But,
yeah, I've always kind of wondered too. Like, it makes me feel like I went to work a couple times. I went to Washington D.C. for a work thing, and I don't know if you've ever been to Washington D.C. in general, but like well, you and I have gone to Chicago a few times, right?
Yeah.
Multiply that just by 1,000 of people just going to work, just constantly just going to work here, there. Like, I don't know. I felt so like just going from my hotel to this dumb training at this whatever, office space it was like 6 blocks away. Like, it didn't matter what time of day I think one time I went over because there was a CVS, no plug intended, right? And it was open till 1, and I'm like, I want to go get, Coke or whatever. And it's like, even at like 12:30, like, it's just a sea of people, like, and they're just super fast going back and forth. They're on their phones and they're dressed in suits and stuff. And just, it's like the hustle and bustle and just the nonstop of like the city just constantly in motion. I don't know. It made me feel like really, really small and unimportant. I don't know, which you got to get that out of your head quickly because it leads to negative thoughts, but
Right.
I don't know. It's just like, I just felt that way. I was just like, man, it's just a sea of people just continually moving down here. And it's like, it's never stops. And it's like, is anybody really doing anything of any importance? Like, does anybody even give a shit about anything? You're like, would you just completely run over the person next to you to get to where you're going because you don't care?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Exactly.
This kind of sort of the chaos of that whole thing reminds me of like sort of the crux of some of the stuff in this song.
Okay. Any musical thoughts about this? Considering this is for a Rush song, it's very long.
Just love the guitar riffs, man. I mean, it's just super cool, and I'm on record about the keyboard intro is so cool. There's a really cool YouTube video, if you can find it, where a guy shows you exactly you have to have the right type of keyboards that'll have all those different filters and whatnot to do it. But he's like, all right, when you get to this part, go here, flip this around. It's kind of cool if you can ever find it. Because I kind of tried watching it. Some buddies of mine had this thing. I think I remember telling you about it. It's called Rush Carnage, where you get like 6 guys together and you go play a bunch of Rush songs, but most of them are not played all that well. Just for fun, you get a case of beer and but it kind of grew into this thing where you'd have guys would even have their sons coming, who are older, who ended up being better than their dads half the time. And you got to the point where you're playing like 25 Rush songs and who's playing what and this, that. And that was one of the ones they played. But
That's
trying
awesome.
to get all that beginning stuff together with all those little quirks and stuff is pretty daunting. Let's just put it that way.
for sure. All right, so that leaves us 2 songs on the record. We have track 6 up next. This is Witch Hunt. I don't have a lot of notes on this one, but I like the it's kind of a cool, creepy vibe. The chord changes in the verse are very unexpected. It's you're expecting that DC whatever, all that kind of stuff, like the standard kind of melody, but it doesn't do that, which I thought was really cool. It's for such a short, kind of more simple song, you're kind of like, wow, what is that? It's very interesting. So I really like that about this song. Where do you stand on Witch Hunt?
Yeah, I love the evil sounding guitar riff and just the evil, like you hear the mob in the background and you just picture them going up with the torches and stuff to like,
Yep.
And this is so I have the liner notes, and I remember when this came out, I was like, okay, this is part 3 of Fear. Like, well, what the hell does that mean? So this is the 3rd part, I guess, in the trilogy. The Weapon is next, and that's on Signals. And then The Enemy Within is on Grace Under Pressure.
Okay.
So those 3 make up what they call the Fear trilogy. So I guess you start with 3 and go to 1 is the way they did it, which is a little weird, but they're all sort of based in our fears of each other and our fears of someone else building an army, and the biggest thing sometimes we fear is actually the enemy within is what we're really scared of is ourselves. We're not scared of the other people. And Neil had a really, I think, perceptive way of kind of sort of trying to just purvey that thought of like, that really does kind of, sometimes it overconsumes our lives. Like we're just not even so much fear, but worry. And then worry leads to fear. And it's like, it really can consume you to a degree. And I think some of these are just metaphors,
Mm-hmm.
Like the mob is angry. I don't think he's really talking about burning a witch at the stake or whatever, but but like just political stuff. It's really kind of
Yeah.
timely for what's going on now. Like, somebody wears a Trump shirt, it's like, oh my God, you're racist, and someone wears a Biden thing, it's like, oh my God, you're trying to take away my guns, and you want to change the sex of all 4 of my kids. It's like no one's like has any common sense. No one's in the middle at all anymore.
Yeah.
There's just, we really are a nation of fear right now.
Yeah. And I mean, Geddy Lee did an interview. It's one of the things I did read in 2011. He did an interview with our local paper, The Plain Dealer, and he talked about the fact that the lyrics to this song are actually really relevant now, and even 30 years, at that point, 30 years past when it was released, he said that it's really, really relevant to today. And I would agree. It's, again, to me, back to more the musical aspect of things. Like, it's, again, with the lyrics, it's pretty cool because it's one of those things that on the surface you might think it's just about burning witches or whatever if you're not reading into it a lot, because of that intro, like, the sound effect stuff in the intro with like the mob and all that, but it's not. And I again, I'm probably oversimplifying this stuff, but that's just how it comes across to me. And I thought that was cool. It's, again, another example of Neil Peart just really writing something just super intelligent and just telling a great story.
There's a line in there too. They'd say there's strangeness too dangerous in our theaters and bookstore shelves. And this, I don't know if you're familiar with the story about, I wonder how much of this was written towards maybe Getty's viewpoint, but his mother actually basically watched her entire family basically go to the gas chamber, and we're like, her entire family was wiped out, literally.
Yep.
So it's like, the whole idea of just like get this fear of, well, we're scared of we burn all the books, we completely just try to annihilate and wipe out a race all based on fear, right? Like nothing else. And I don't know, I'll have to try to find the YouTube interview for you, because like, I don't know, it's like the most powerful like 10 minutes I've ever heard somebody talk about a topic, and you're like, you can't tell if you want to cry or if you just want to punch a wall or like kick a wall. Like, you just hear the way this story is laid out, and like what his mom witnessed and had to go through. It's just I just can't even fathom it.
Yeah, no, definitely a terrible story. I'll have to look that up because I was not aware of that, but that's definitely some cool backstory there. 21/12/1974 says, "Those who know what's best for us must rise and save us from ourselves." Great lyric. I totally agree with that. Aiken giving us a show topic. He says, "At some point, I'd love to see you guys go track by track, score versus exit stage left."
Oh God, you think John could be objective in something like that? Come on, Aiken.
I like Rush, but I think, because I like Dream Theater more, it would be difficult. But I mean, I would do it. It would be
Right.
it would be. I mean, hell, dude. We're gonna do Metallica versus Metallica at some point. We're doing a Van Halen episode. Like, we can do all kinds of goofy stuff.
Aiken
Why
has
not?
to come on to himself then. I want all 3 of us for that one.
Yeah, okay, but he's gonna root for every single song on Exit Stage Left. He wants nothing to do with score.
All right, then you get another Rush guy, get another Dream Theater guy on. Let's see.
Yeah. Well, there he goes. He says, Aiken says, "I think John would learn a ton." That's probable. That's probable. So I don't know if we could do a cage match. I think it would just be a track by track. We'd have to figure that out. But so let's close up the record here, of course, with the final track, "Vital Signs." And you were speaking earlier of reggae-ish sounding songs, and this one definitely has that feel to it. This song definitely stands out like a sore thumb against the rest of the material on the album, specifically for that reason. But it's a very direct song. It's very simple, but it's a totally different vibe than the rest of the record. And I don't know why, because it's just repetitious. But for some reason, the way that it ends, the whole "everybody got to elevate from the noise," and it does that thing like, it's 16 times or something. I really dug that. And usually things that just like repeat ad nauseum, I get it's like, 4 lines done 4 times each, but usually those types of things don't interest me. But for some reason this time I kind of dug it. I really liked it. And maybe it's because, again, I was kind of listening to the lyrics, and it was a little different than what they'd done previously on the record. So it kind of ninth inning curveball or whatever. But I liked it. I thought it was cool. I thought it was an interesting way to close the record. It's something that's totally like it sticks out like a sore thumb. And I think it's a very progressive thing to do to end a record like this with a song like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I love the intro on this. I think this is the first time I'd ever heard like that, just panning stereo back and forth, done to that degree. When you're listening in headphones, it's like really just a super cool listening experience. And I totally agree about the end. Like, I don't know, it just feels like the last song on an album, and we're sort of milking this thing, but it also makes sense the way it's done, like that deviate and elevate from the norm. Like, I don't know, I love those lines, and just like you can just feel them sort of trailing off at the end, and you're just like, it is a perfect end to album. Yeah, it's weird in that, if they stuck this song second or like fourth, I don't think it would make any sense. And I think they put it perfectly at the end like that. That's exactly where the song should be.
Yeah. The whole second side of the record, Camera Eye, I guess, is kind of obvious because it's a long song and it's very progressive. But I think the whole second side of this record is an interesting one because, the first side is absolutely iconic. If you're a Rush fan, Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, YYZ, and Limelight are just, they're up there for you. And, are the songs on the second half of the record as good? I would say no. But you still listen to them like, all right, these are great. Even though you had that incredible stuff that came after, came before it, it still stands up to it. I think if you put, those three final songs, Camera Eye, Witch Hunt, and Vital Signs, on pretty much any other record, they might be standout tracks. That's kind of how it seems to be, and solely because of the quality of the first four. And, I could be talking up my ass because, again, I'm not overly familiar with Rush at this point, but I think they're great songs. And they hold up well against the other stuff, which is, pretty much regarded as just absolutely classic Rush material.
Yeah, Vital Signs is another one I don't think they played hardly too often. I was lucky, and I think I saw Rush 3 times. I'm not sure which show it was, but I was lucky enough to get Witch Hunt on one of those shows, and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't but not believe I was getting to hear that song.
Right.
That was like very, very cool and unexpected. But yeah, I don't think Vital Signs ever got played too much. I could be wrong if you go look at some set lists, but I'm fairly certain on that one. But yeah, just like you said, there's a little bit of that reggae in there. That's like some of the up picks and stuff, and there's just clean guitar parts coming in that just real quick stop start things, and there's definitely some Police in there, but then it's like it's a pretty kind of a rock anthem towards the end almost, like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's just hard to build songs that I just love stuff that's dynamic and then it builds towards the end. And I think they just are masterpieces at like all three. This whole second side, I feel like has that, has the dynamic to it, and everything kind of builds to a crescendo at the end of each song. And I don't know, it just works. And like you said, it's totally different than the first side. Like, almost like if they didn't have albums back then, they had CDs, and it went to that, you'd be like, wait, what is going on here?
Right.
Like wouldn't even. But I don't know, the way they did it and the way they placed them on the album, and those three are on the second side. It just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's definitely great sequencing for sure. I would completely agree with you on that. 2112-1974 says, Neil's drums during that part build and flow and add so much. I think it goes hand in hand with Portnoy and how he builds the beginning to the Great Debate. That's a very good analogy. That is a very good analogy because that's, obviously two very different songs. The Great Debate is, a 12-minute monster, and, Vital Signs is like 4 minutes or something like that. But, yeah, the technique is definitely there. So good call, 2112. Very nice. Yeah, so overall, man, like I've been saying, this was a really, really cool exercise for me because I went into it being like, okay, how am I going to feel about this? Like, I get it. It's Rush's, most popular record. And I knew 2 of the songs really well. And I was familiar with YYZ, and I knew about the song Red Barchetta, but I surprisingly really, really liked it. So I give you a lot of credit for bringing this one to the table because this was cool, man. This was a really cool thing to listen to, and I got a lot out of it, and I'm definitely going to go down that rabbit hole and kind of check it out and see the ups and downs of the Rush catalog. So, thanks for bringing this to the table.
Yeah, man. I think Rush is one of those rare bands too, where it's like almost everybody wanted to be the drummer, which is kind of rare because most people want to get up there and be Robert Plant, and look like that and get girls all over you, or or Eddie Van Halen, with the cool guitar stuff. But like with Rush, it's like, I mean, obviously, Petrucci's highly influenced, and there's people that love, Lifeson and Gailey and stuff. But like, going back to like Tom Sawyer, has there ever been a song where it comes to that one part and everybody goes doon 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 doon, everybody does every little fill of that drums in the air on their hands, like during the concert, or when you're in the car, it's like, well, I gotta, I mean, it's almost like up there with the Bohemian Rhapsody, you gotta, when the heavy part comes in, you gotta do the Wayne's World,
the headbanging, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like that, it's like everybody wants to be Neil Peart up there and play the drums like that, and like just because he's just such revered as a god. And yeah, this was an awesome episode, man. I think, probably of all the bands that we're going to end up doing this with, we already did Queensryche. I think Rush is obviously the biggest influence on probably every single person in that band, other than maybe Jordan Rudess. I doubt he cared all that much. Like, he probably appreciated them musically. I don't know what he got out of them keyboard wise, but maybe there was something, I don't know.
How to play with your feet. That's what he got out of it.
Yeah.
That's the one area Jordan hasn't gotten into yet. He's going to make an app for an iPad. You play with your toes.
Yeah.
It knows to ignore the balls of your feet and just only take the input from the toes.
Right.
that's like the next morph.
That was crazy that they just always refused to get a keyboard player. Like, nah, I got 2 feet. So it's like,
that's the thing. Like live, they made this much noise. Like it's absolutely fascinating. And if you're not a musician, and I'm sure a lot of Rush fans obviously are. It's like Dream Theater. Like if you look around, probably like 3 out of 4 people at a Dream Theater show, if not more, like 9 out of 10. They're musicians. You really don't find somebody that's like, I don't play anything, I don't sing, but I really like Dream Theater. Rush is probably the same way. But for people that aren't musicians, to do what they do is so difficult, because doesn't Alex Lifeson play some pedals too? Doesn't he? Did I hear that right?
I don't think so. I mean, he may here and there. I mean, we will, full disclosure, like when they did stuff like Power Windows, you have to track those keyboards. You can't play those arpeggiated lines that are going all throughout. But stuff like almost everything on this, and Signals, I believe, up to probably Grace Under Pressure, he was able to play either the bass parts with his feet, or trigger a keyboard thing here and there with his feet, or play the keyboard with his hand and play the bass pedals, those Taurus bass pedals with his feet,
Yep.
But yeah, and sing at the same time.
Yeah.
So I mean, you remember like trying to play bass and sing, like, it's like, I always thought that was like just ridiculous. Like, and this isn't like, this isn't what's the dude from Cliff Williams,
Yeah.
This isn't Cliff Williams. No offense to all the Cliff Williams fans out there.
Yeah.
And I know there's a silent mass of you that there are, and Ian Hill fans too, right?
I'm sure we have a lot of AC/DC and Judas Priest fans tuned into our Dream Theater podcast talking about Rush.
Well, we might, but I mean, my point is, like, to be able to play all those complex lines while you're singing and playing and singing those killer melodies, and then like, oh, I'll figure out a way to play keyboards too with my feet.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So Aiken says that he actually interviewed Geddy Lee in person. He says, one of my all-time highlights was interviewing Geddy in person. He was really friendly and jokey. Man, that's kind of a big one. That's kind of a big one.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. He's like, I don't know if you noticed, maybe they touched on the documentary. He is a massive like baseball fan, and he's a huge historian. Like, he has a ridiculous collection of sign memorabilia and stuff, and which I always think it's cool where the guy's like into something else besides music,
Yeah. Well, dude, that's a good time to close up on that one because, yeah, like Rush is incredible, and obviously it extends beyond music. So, like, the guy doesn't just know bass; he knows baseball. Get it? See what I did there?
Right.
That's called a terrible segue, kids. But yeah, this was fun, Brian. Good idea on this one. Like I said, we'll be doing more episodes like this. We got to figure out the Metallica one is what we got to figure out because, do we deep dive a pair of records? Do we do a cage match between two records? Like we haven't decided. 2112 says, great show, guys. Thanks, 21. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for sticking around the whole time. I know it's been a long one. We had some technical difficulties, but thank you very much for sticking around and checking out the show. We appreciate you very much. Yeah, obviously, we kind of teased it, but October 6th, we're going to be doing a Van Halen episode. So my inclination is to do 1984, if you're okay with that. Because that is the most.
You are the Van Halen guru expert, and I was bummed when Eddie passed, but you took it harder than probably, other than his family, anyone I know. So that's all you. Whatever you want to do on that show, I'm along for the ride, and I'll put in my 2 cents.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Van Halen 1 is the obvious one, but for me, 1984 was kind of like that turning point for them on a lot of levels, and it's also the most influential record of my entire life. So I'd kind of like to dig into that one. So, and who's to say we can't do more? I mean, like I said, we've done Operation Mindcrime, but Paul Logue wants to talk some Queensryche, so we could dig into another Queensryche record and stuff like that. But yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff coming up, man. We're trying to track down John Petrucci since he'll be doing some promo, some press, I should say, for his solo tour. So we're trying to work on getting John on the show. Speaking of, you did not answer my question in my email the other day. Would you like to attend the virtual taste testing for John Petrucci's Rock the Barrel 2 bourbon next Friday night? Because I can't log in to do it. I'll be sound checking for a gig, but I can send you the credentials and you could log in and like listen to the Q&A and stuff like that, which is definitely going to be like, music related at some point. So.
Yeah, originally I thought there was a chance I was going to be out of town, but I should be around for that. So,
okay.
Yeah, put me like 75-25 for sure. We'll talk about it after the show.
Okay. I think you kind of owe me, considering you blew off the Jordan Rudess show. So you got to do something.
I owe you because I didn't go to a show that you didn't go to either.
Man, because I wasn't able to go, and it was perfect show content, and you blew it. So, but so yeah, so we'll be doing that. We actually have a show the night after the Cleveland John Petrucci date, so that'll be kind of cool. October 6th, like we said, is going to be a Van Halen episode. And do not forget, Friday, December 30th is going to be our next fan hangout. So if you would like to be a co-host of the show, just shoot us an email at talkingintoinfinity@gmail.com. And we definitely like to get you guys on camera with Brian and I co-hosting the show. And we talk about anything. It's obviously Dream Theater centric, but we end up talking about anything that comes up, and we just have some drinks and celebrate the holidays and celebrate music. And so that'll be very cool. That is Friday, December 30th. But until then, we are back here, right here on talkingintoinfinity.com, on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the cmsnetwork.com. In 2 weeks, it will be Thursday, August 25th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, Brian, again, great idea for the show tonight, man. That was a blast. Thanks for bringing this to the table.
Thanks, man. Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and it forced me to, like, loosen that tight wallet of mine and actually spend some money and get some cool stuff. And because you know how I am with money.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up, but
yeah, I wonder if you can find it for $3 somewhere.
Yeah, damn eBay. eBay doesn't have it for anything less than 20.
Yeah, no, that was cool. So actually I made a couple purchases. So I got this. Of course I got the Labrie that came, so I got that, and I got the Michael Romeo. So I think this is like a cool start to my second venture into vinyl. But yeah, a lot of fun. And and guys, hit us up on all of our social medias. And if you got not even kidding, and this isn't so we don't have to do work, but if you got show topics, shoot them over to us. We're more than happy to hear about them. Or if you've got guest ideas or whatever, or if you know people that are in that, hit us up. We'd love to, kind of explore anything and all. Cause like we said a million times, this is for everybody else. We do this because we love it, but we also want stuff that people want to hear, and we want to get people involved as much as we can. And it's crazy, like I miss a show, and I'm like, there's times when I'm like, I don't know if I have anything to say, and I'm kind of like nervous. And then, but you go a month without being on, and I'm just jonesing to get back on,
Sure.
So it's like, it was great. And once again, thanks to Adam for filling in last time. And we'll see you guys again in 2 weeks, I guess.
All right, guys, that'll about wrap it up. So he is Brian. I am your host, John. And until next time, guys, Carpe Diem.